Why myths? Why should we care about myths? What do they have to do with my life?
Well, my first answer would be, well, go on, live your life. It's a good life. You don't need this. I don't believe in being interested in subjects because they're said to be important and interesting. I believe in being caught by it somehow or other. But you may find that with a proper introduction, this subject will catch you. And so what can it do for you when it does catch you? These bits of information from ancient times, which have to do with the themes that have supported man's life, built civilizations, informed religions over the millennia, have to do with deep inner problems, inner mysteries, inner thresholds of passage. And if you don't know what the guide signs are along the way, you have to work it out yourself. But once this catches you, there is always such a feeling from one or another of these traditions of information of a deep, rich, life-vivifying sort that you want to give it up.
So myths are stories of the search by men and women through the ages for meaning, for significance, to make life signify, to touch the eternal, to understand the mysterious, to find out who we are.
People say that what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that the life experiences that we have on the purely physical plane will have resonances within that are those of our own innermost being and reality. And so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. That's what it's all finally about, and that's what these clues help us to find within ourselves.
Myths are clues?
Myths are clues to the spiritual potentialities of the human life.
What we're capable of knowing within?
Yes.
And experiencing within.
Yes.
I like you changed the definition of a myth from the search for meaning to the experience of meaning.
The experience.
The experience of life.
The experience of life. The mind has to do with meaning. In here, what's the meaning of a flower? That Zen story of the sermon of the Buddha when his whole company was gathered and he simply lifted a flower. And there was only one man, Kashyapa, who gave him a sign with his eye that he understood what was said. What's the meaning of the universe? What's the meaning of a flea? It's just there, that's it. And your own meaning is that you're there. Now we are so engaged in doing things to achieve purposes of outer value that we forget that the inner value, the rapture that is associated with being alive is what it's all.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Yo, back in this business. Today we got a hell of a show. I got my dog BMW, also known as Ben W, or Super Dude. But everybody know Ben. But we had a great discussion today, great talk, bounced some nice shit back and forth. Ben's a smart dude, so he's the perfect candidate to have on a Go Deep show because he doesn't just stop with like dead air and doesn't get you blah blah blah. Ben's a cool dude, Ben's a smart dude, and we had a hella conversation. But before we get into that conversation, you know what you have to do. You have to listen to some music. You have to get ready to go deep. And you gotta stop being a biznitch. Why? Because being a bitch means you have been indulging in some bitch assness. There have been some bitch assness going on Twitter, and we did discuss that. There's a little group that's just flourishing, basking in the ambiance of bitch assness. We addressed that group today too. Let's get it. Go Deep, episode 134. Yo mom is a bitch.
Today's agenda, got the suitcase up in the central. Go to room 112, tell them Blanco sent you. Feel the strangers, if no money exchanges. I got these kids in ranges, to leave them brains brainless. All they told is stainless, you just remaining. Calm as possible, make the deal go through. If not, 12 shots, we know how you do. Please make your killings clean, slugs up in between. They eyes like true lies, kill them and flee the scene. Let's bring back the coke or the cream, or else your life is on the shelf. We mean this, Frank, the cats we fucking with, bombs on your mom's gas tank. Let's get this money, baby. They shady, we get shady. Dress up like ladies and burn them in dirty 380s. Then they come to kill our babies. That's all out. I got gats that blow the wall out. Clear them all out, fuck the fallout. Word to stretch, I bet they pussy. Seven digits push me, fucking real. Here's the deal, I got 100 bricks, 14.5 a piece. Enough to cop 6, I hide a house on the beach. Supply the peeps with jeeps, brick a piece, capiche? Everybody getting cream, no one consider the leech. Think about it now, that's damn near 1.5. I kill them all, I be set for life. Frank, pay attention, these motherfuckers is henchmen. Renegades, if you die, they still get paid. Extra probably, fuck a robbery, I'm the boss. Promise you won't rob them, I promise. But of course, you know I have my fingers, fuck a robbery, I'm the boss. Promise you won't rob them, I promise. But of course, you know I have my fingers, fuck a robbery, I'm the boss. Promise you won't rob them, I promise. But of course, you know I have my fingers crossed. Niggas bleed just like us. Picture me being scared of a nigga that breathe the same air as me. Niggas bleed just like us. Picture me being shook, we could both pull burners, make the motherfucking beef cook. Niggas bleed just like us. Picture a nigga hiding my life in that man's hands while he just decides. Niggas bleed just like us. I'd rather go toe to toe with all of y'all, running ain't in my protocol. Since it's on, I call my nigga Arizona Ron from Tucson. Push the black Yukon, usually had the slow moves on. Mostly rock the Osley. Stupid as a youngin', chose not to move wisely. Sharper with game, him and his crooks called the jooks. Heard it was sweet, about 350 a piece. Ron bought a truck, 2 bricks laid in the cut. His peeps got bucked, got locked the fuck up. Ron vanished, came back, speaking Spanish. Lavish habits, 2 rings, 20 carats. Here's a criminal, nigga made America's most. Killed his baby mother, brother, slit his throat. The nigga got back with the toast, weeded, took trial, beat it. Now we feel he undefeated, he mean it. Nothing to lose, tattooed around his gun wounds. Everything to gain, embedded in his brain. And me, I say the same, for this money you die. Especially if my daughter crying, I ain't lying. Y'all know the signs, bleed just like us. Picture me being scared of a nigga that breathe the same air as me. Niggas bleed just like us. Picture me being shook, we could both pull burners, make the motherfucking beef cook. Niggas bleed just like us. Picture a nigga hiding my life in that man's hands while he just decides. Niggas bleed just like us. I'd rather go toe to toe with all of y'all, running ain't in my protocol. We agreed to go and shooting is silly because niggas could be hiding in showers with Mac Billy, so I freaked them. The telly manager was Puerto Rican, Gloria from Astoria. I went to war with her peeps in 91, stole a gun from my workers, and they took drugs, they tried to jerk us. We blazed, they blazed, long story. Glow seen my face, got shook, thought a nigga was coming for the safe. Now she breaks. Shut up, 112, what's shaking? A Jamaican, some bitches I swear, they look gay in a black Range Rover, been outside all day. If it's trouble, let me know, I'll be on my way. Please, I got kids to feed. I done see you make niggas bleed. Nightmare this bitch don't need. Wrong, get the gasoline, this spot, we bout to blow this. Get the cash before the cops and Range Rover cats notice. Room 112, right by the staircase, perfect place where they evacuate. They meet they fate, Ron, pass the gasoline, the nigga pass me kerosene. Fuck it, it's flammable, my hunger is unexplainable. Strike the match, just what I expected. The dread kid ejected and set it into here come two opposite sexes, one black, one Malaysian. We in the hallway waiting patient. As soon as she hit the door, we start blasting. I saw her braids hit the floor. Wrong laughing, I swear to God. I hit Maxi Priest at least 12 times. Chest around, shot the chin in the breast. She crying, headshots put her to rest. Pop open up briefcases, nothing but fragrant faces. Spots hot, sprinklers, alarm systems. That's when other guests start to slip in. It's time for us to get the dipping. I know them niggas in the ranges on their way up flipping. Pistol gripping, I know the clipping. The hallway got real loud and crowded. They walk right past us, I don't know how they allowed it. The funny thing about it, through all the excitement, they range got told they double parked by a hydrant. Stupid motherfucker.
Word. All right, well, I'm going to introduce you. This is Go Deep episode 134. I got Super Dude on the line, a.k.a. Ben W. What's going on, Ben?
Thanks, man. It's going.
Yeah, that's good. So, for those who don't know Ben W., he's been around a lot. You see him on everything, but Ben, tell us a little bit something about you.
I'm just a normal guy. I started out big Superman fan, and then, Zack Snyder, legend. I can't believe I got to meet the dude, but it's kind of crazy. I remember when Man of Steel was coming out, I was super psyched.
Right.
I've been a lifelong Superman fan.
Right. So then there's been other Superman movies though. What got you in this Snyder cut movement?
Man, there's only one best Superman. That's Zack's. There's no question.
I agree.
I remember growing up. I remember getting introduced to Superman by my dad, Chris Reeves, Superman.
Right.
And that was great when I was a kid, but whenever you grow up, you want your heroes to kind of mature with you a little bit.
Right.
And so that's definitely what Zack's brought, and I think he's gonna say something amazing about Zack's Superman. It's already been said.
Yeah, I know. So how do you feel about Superman news lately? It looked like sometimes Henry Cavill is up, sometimes he's down. What's going on?
Yeah, I was kind of heartbroken. I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I saw that interview when he was talking about his mustache,
yeah.
when he's talking Justice League, that pissed me off. Just knowing what Zack's gone through and all the stuff, and then Henry's like, "Oh yeah, my mustache. That's the thing that matters the most." I was kind of like, dude, I know maybe you can't talk about this, but saying that is nonsense.
Right. I agree. So there's been a lot of theories on why he said that. Why do you think he said that?
Um, I don't know. I don't get good vibes from Danny Garcia. Um, her whole like I was listening to Koj talk about this, and her whole good at making big stars like The Rock, and I guess that's his actual ex-wife, but like she's good at going for money, but how many of The Rock's movies have you seen like more than more than once? Like I don't know how many Rock's movies I can go back and watch over and over,
Right.
but I've seen means a lot to me. And so does BVS. Like that's probably my favorite movie. So
Oh, you like
I don't
You
know.
like BVS more than Man of Steel?
It goes back and forth for me for sure.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Like some days definitely BVS, some days definitely Man of Steel.
Yeah, I agree. So do you think, because Henry Cavill said the other day he thinks BVS is a Batman movie. Did you feel that same way?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Dr. Chris or Vinaldo on Twitter about this, and he made some pretty good points. But what I think the whole arc that Zach was going for is a Superman arc. Like that was gonna be a 5-part Superman story featuring like the Justice League, basically.
Right,
That's how I see it.
right,
But BVS, like it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and apparently Henry kind of I don't know, he kind of started listening to all the nonsense talk about it, and I think he got confused. But I do see like from some people's perspectives, there's a lot of Batman in that movie.
right,
Like it's he shares the title, like he even starts the title, and it's really cool that Zach was able to do um, basically a movie about both of them. I think
right, right,
just like Superman's effect on Batman, and then Batman kind of representing humanity, and then humanity's effect on Superman. I think he balanced it really well.
right, right. That
But
was pretty deep, man. Batman kind of represents humanity because he does, and that's what it deepens his character if you look at him that way, because he's like the quintessential human. Well, the top in all human forms, pretty much. Except he's a little weird at times mentally, but money wise, elite status, his how he trains his body, he does kind of represent humanity in in the crew of like a bunch of fucking aliens and gods and superheroes and shit like that.
yeah, especially in that conflict, I think you're right on.
Right, right. So I talk to you a lot, but we talk on like always like deep shit. Oh, and first before we get into our conversation, I know me and you sometimes we've bumped heads in the past. We didn't agree on different ways to take little action, but I do want to apologize for if I rubbed you the wrong way. I got to do this
Nah, man, you don't
on
have to apologize for anything. We're all passionate. We're all fighting, and I mean, if there's anybody who's been in the wrong, it's probably been me. I get pretty heated sometimes on Twitter and whatnot, but it's
yeah.
all good, man. Just I don't hold any bad blood against not you or anybody in the Snyder Cut movement.
Word, word. Well, I still had to throw that out there just so you know that I think you're a cool dude, man, and I like because we talk a lot about other shit, but I like the conversations we've been having, and I like your mindset being like a little, not a little. I don't know how tall you are, but oh, like a, sometimes I never think people would even understand what the fuck I be saying sometimes. And it's not,
Yeah,
and it's like sometimes me and you, we come from two different backgrounds. You know, I'm black, you're white, but we kind of get each other. Because you understand shit I be saying, and I'm like, damn, out of everybody, Ben picked this up. So I had to throw it out there that, you know, if I ever rub you the wrong way, dog, I apologize for that shit.
no, man, it's good. And yeah, we're all human, man.
Yeah.
Black and white, we all bleed the same, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. You're right. Except I sometimes think I'm a superhero, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, you're Batman, remember?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. How did I forget? So let me
Yeah.
where'd you get that kind of, let's say, kind of like a philosopher? You have a real deep perspective on a lot of shit that I really enjoy listening, and sometimes I might say something and you just, not counter it, but you'll build on it and add on. Where did you get that from? What type of stuff do you study or get into that have your perspective like that?
I appreciate that, man. I just to try and like dig far back. I was always kind of like one of the reasons I related to Superman so much was like I felt he was kind of an outcast and an outsider, and I think a lot of us kind of feel that way.
Yeah.
So that was definitely how I felt growing up. I remember share a couple stories with you. I was like a really nervous kid growing up, and you might be able to tell that sometimes in our conversations. But like, I would like throw up in the toilet every morning before school.
Damn.
I remember that, and it was weird. I don't really know why, but I was just really anxious all the time. But Superman was kind of like my grounding. And I'm gonna say that a lot. I'm sorry, but I actually had this one Superman T-shirt that I would wear almost every day to school, and it was like for some reason it was like my shield. But I would come home every day, and I would ask my mom to wash it for me so I could wear it again the next day. It was kind of funny, but I guess kind of being an outsider, all of us can kind of relate. That Joseph Campbell quote's a great one that Fiona picked for the website.
Right.
But sorry, I lost my train of thought.
So,
But yeah, all of us can kind of relate, and it's kind of caused this whole situation's caused us all to dig deeper into what we believe in, what we're going to stand for, and like what we really want out of life. I think, at least that's how it's worked for me, and I think that's happening for a lot of people.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So what is it? What's some of the topics that it made you want to dig deep on and stand firm for? Because you're a pillar in this movement, and I see you doing a bunch of shit, dog. I'm gonna ask you about that shit later, but tell me, what's some of the subjects that Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio touched on that made you want to stand up for them?
That's a good question. I remember some of it started with Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, and I guess David Goyer's writing kind of bridges the gap between those two series. But I remember one line that really spoke to me in Batman Begins was I think Bruce Wayne's talking to Falcone, and he says something like, "And people always fear what they don't understand."
Right.
And that was something that like made the world kind of click for me because I felt like a lot of people were, we all feel like misunderstood a lot, or at least I do.
Right. Right.
And sometimes everybody does. And so whenever we feel misunderstood, sometimes people turn on us and we don't know why they're turning on us. And something that helped me understand that was like maybe for some reason, they just fear me out of nature.
Right.
Well, not that I'm like imposing on anybody, it's just they don't get me. And so
Right.
something in them is like a natural reaction, if that makes sense.
Right. Definitely. So
And then Martha kind of repeats the same line in BVS, but she twists it just a little bit, saying people hate what they don't understand.
Right.
And that I felt was even more relevant to that movie because I felt like most people just didn't understand that movie. And there's so many things that are just like, it's not just like meta about Zack's movies. I think it's like I was listening to some Joseph Campbell quotes earlier today, some interviews, and he was talking. I remember Zack references the power of mythology a lot.
Right.
His book, The Power of Mythology.
Right.
And what Joseph Campbell's saying basically is that mythology kind of runs deep in all of us, and it's kind of like the drumbeat that we all run to. Even if we've never heard these stories before, they're just naturally in us. And I think Zach's movies really bring out the mythology within us and kind of show us
Right.
what reality is. At least I don't have a great understanding of it, but from what I've seen, like Zach's movies aren't just meta; they're like transcendent of the human condition, basically.
Right.
I don't know if I'm making any sense here.
No, you're making perfect sense. Do you believe in reincarnation? Okay.
Do I what?
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I don't, but I'm always open to hearing ideas, honestly, because I've kind of recently I've been just in like a constant state of like, I don't know, self-sacrifice and rebirth, I guess is how Campbell would put it.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure it all out.
Right. So what you were saying, how the stories like resonate in our blood. It could be there's like multiple theories for this. Like the blood kind of trickles down, or it follows a line from your family, and it keeps a memory of everything that ever happened in your whole family. It keeps record of that on DNA. And also,
I think that's sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that's pretty true. And whether you look at it from like a spiritual perspective or you look at it from like an evolutionary perspective, we've kind of just humans, as we've evolved or as we've grown, we've kind of like there's a human nature to us, and it's got a lot more wisdom than we could ever learn in a lifetime.
Right.
Is kind of what I'm figuring out.
Right, definitely. So it's like some of those stories, like let's say we can watch Lord of the Rings and we feel like we've been there before, or we feel like we were in this battle and it just rings to us, or like we watch The Matrix and we feel that shit. And when we say we feel it, is because it feels it touched on something inside of us, So I think if it's not like reincarnation in the flesh, it's reincarnation through our bloodline, And our bloodline has been around, let's say, through the history battle and Justice League. You were one of those humans, the mankind that was out there, or, you feel it, like you remember it. You can see little scenes like, the knights when they were burying their mother box or whatever, and it just resonates with you. Like, damn, I've been here before, and that's what Zach's movies do. Like, there's different forms of art. You can see like a mainstream music video right now, and it's all like Gucci clothes, Phantoms, Ferraris, gold bling and all this shit. But it doesn't resonate with anybody. They're forcing it on you, right? Forcing it. And it feels like, oh, that's cool, but I'll probably never see that. Or you can see...
Yeah, it's brainwashing.
Right, correct, definitely. It's kind of like brainwashing you to make you believe that's what you want. But then you can see like a Tupac Dear Mama video where he's talking about his mama and he's talking about growing up in a house, doing X, Y, and Z. And we feel it. We're like, damn, I did that too. And that's what I think Zack Snyder's movies, they do. Or at least the Justice League and his, Man of Steel. We all felt something with Superman. Maybe if we didn't get fired, we wasn't hitchhiking. But we all felt that moment where, damn, this job kind of sucks. I feel like punching my manager and I'm going to just go walk off and cool down, Or... I'm scared at school. I don't know really what's going on with me, but I feel my body changing. Or anything like that. We all resonate with shit like that. And I think that's what Zack Snyder's art touches on more than anything. It's not brainwashing like a Marvel movie. It's touching us, like we felt it in our soul. And I think that's what brought us all together because, through everything, all this bullshit we've been fighting through, we still been hanging together, because we've all been touched by something. So it's like a calling us so we can continue to feel touched,
Yeah, no, that's really well said. I'm gonna have to send you this video later because I think you'll like it.
Oh, all
But
right.
I want to ask, have you heard of Carl Jung at all?
Yeah, yeah. I've studied.
You
I've
know, like
listened to
the
some of them shit.
what?
Yeah, I've listened to some of those like audio shit on YouTube about him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he brings up uh what's called like an archetype, like a character that repeats through a lot of stories, but it's a really important character to maintain like the hero's journey basically.
Right.
So like a good example would be a wise old wizard.
Right.
Like that archetype repeats like in King Arthur's story, and then you see it in like Harry Potter, and then you see it in Lord of the Rings, and you kind of see it as like that's the mentor of the hero.
Right.
And like there's a lot to be said about just the characteristics of that archetype, but there's all kinds of archetypes throughout all the stories we've been telling for thousands of years. And
Right.
so I think those archetypes will always repeat, but being willing to tell them honestly how we feel them.
Right.
I think that's always what's going to resonate most with people and individuals, not some brainwashing message,
Right.
not some political driven message.
Right. Right. 100% correct. So let me ask you, how do you feel about our current state of the union? Like sometimes it feel like we're at the finish line on the Snyder Cut, and then the next day we're arguing about some shit on Twitter. What's going on, and how should we navigate this right now?
Hmm. Um, I think there's honestly, I think it's more of the same that we've always
Yeah.
been seeing. We're always gonna have detractors. We're always gonna have haters. It might actually be better than ever right now
Right.
because we've broken mainstream. I think there was the time from like when 2017, November 17th, from then until like I'd say SnyderCon, it was like it was hard. Like everybody was like still trying to figure out, I don't know how to organize this thing so we can make a difference. And Fiona was making a website and people were sending out surveys. Remember we had that change.org survey that got like over 180,000 signatures.
Right.
And I think until we got like some video confirmation from Zach, like he's been playing with us this whole time, like encouraging us, giving us little messages here and there. I've never seen anybody do that, and that was the thing that really kept us in the fight. And I love that. He was like he's super cryptic and trolling us this whole time, but
Right.
once we hit SnyderCon, we got to like and we got that video of him saying it's done.
Right.
Like that was a huge moment. We're just kind of like, oh shit, like there no more can the haters come at us. Like
Right.
we have video evidence of this, and still the haters came at us, and still they wrote articles about us and hit pieces. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think once we broke mainstream, and everybody was a part of it. This year, November 17th, that was actually a month ago today.
Yeah. Damn. You're right.
But yeah, that's what really like elevated us. We're in the mainstream now. Like
Yeah.
they can't stop us now. Our voice has been heard, and like a lot of people are theorizing right now, Zach might be back.
Right.
Like I hope he is. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know if he wants to come back and finish it. I know he wants us to see his Justice League
Right.
and 214-minute version, not anything else the nonsense 40 Club will tell you. But I can't believe they're still pushing it.
You mean 165?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I commented on one of Chris Wong's videos the other day, and Eric still came back and he was like, "No, it was 165." I was like, "Dude, Zach literally took a picture of the can and it
Right.
says 214 on it. You can't buy this level of stupid. I don't.
So
I'm good.
why is it going on though? I mean, like they can't.
Uh,
I can't imagine somebody is that dumb and that stubborn and that stuck on a way that they can't just. You know what I mean? Like, damn, it's written right here in the picture from the director. Are you
yep.
actually telling me that you're gonna go against the director to fucking, make one of your theories sound right? Are you really telling me you're gonna do that, or is it something more to it? They can't be that stupid.
It's it's a lot of things. I think I don't know if like they're like maybe some of them or maybe their sources are in Jeff Jones' pocket, but
Now we
I
talking.
for some of these low level guys, I think they're chasing clout and like I don't know what your rules are for like talking shit on here,
No, they
but
can
I
say
just see a
whatever
lot
they
of dumb
want.
shit, and I I don't know. They're like tribal about it, and they're like, look, I'm a big fan of Chris Wong. I think he got us through some hard stuff.
Right.
You did too, to be honest. Like you were really spearheading a lot of the shit when a lot of people didn't want to bring it up and didn't want to face the hard facts. I was part of that party included. Like I didn't want to see them for what they are. And like you said, we butted heads a couple times, but I think you were right for the most part.
Oh, thanks,
The
man.
only thing, yeah, I think the only thing I had a really hard time with was like, I don't know. I don't want us to turn against ourselves is
Right,
my main
right,
thing.
right, right, right.
Like I want us to keep trying to, tell people like how awesome this is and keep bringing people in to push for this. And honestly, right now, we don't have to do a lot of work for that. Like, did you see the video reaction of Ryan Reynolds saying, actually, this is the Snyder cut or
Yeah, he
whatever
got a standing
at
ovation.
CCXP?
Yeah, standing ovation.
That was crazy. Like, you look at the crowd and the whole crowd's like, what the fuck did he just say? And then they just stand up there like
Yeah.
screaming their heads off. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, no, no, I'm on the wrong panel. He knows exactly what's going on right now. Like,
Right.
God, I wish he was like attached to this project somehow so he could leak it or something like he did for Deadpool. That was hilarious.
Yeah, I definitely wish that too because Ryan Reynolds is doing more work, and I hate to say it over your boy, but Henry Cavill, he's doing more work
Yeah,
to talk about the Snyder Cut than Superman is.
no, you're right. Actually, whenever that video came out, I think that was a couple weeks ago. I put a picture on Twitter. I was like, you know what? Today Ryan Reynolds is my Superman. Like, this
Right.
is awesome. Like he's fighting for this, and it's sad to see that Henry can't talk about it. I don't know why. I don't know if he's totally bought into the Jeff Jones Superman or that he's got contracts. I'm not. I don't see the whole picture,
Right.
but hopefully, actually, I kind of saw Jeff talking about this on Twitter a little bit, Jeff Purdy,
Right.
um, or maybe we just had a back and forth or something. But uh, he was somebody. It might have been Cat. Somebody posted a picture of Zach's last two Vero posts at one point were both about Henry, and they were both like, "I love Henry."
Right.
And so I was like, I think what I said was, "The love of the father will bring home prodigal son" or something like
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
And then Jeff replied with something like, uh, "It's he's completely loyal," and I don't remember how I said it. Sorry,
It's all right.
but I need to find that and send that to you. But it
All
was
right.
it was just like it really spoke to me, like
Yeah.
how Zach is really. I think Zach is just showing so much love to Henry. He's just gonna bring him in. Like you can't deny Zach this. I think Zach's overwhelming positive attitude is just gonna reel Henry in.
Right.
It's
And
kind of funny.
that's been
I don't know.
that's been apparent. Like I don't know how Zach does it, dog, but
Yeah,
that's one positive dude. And then you look at his movies
yeah,
and they got like these violent streaks and like how does this nice guy know how to set up fight scenes like this? Like and
yeah.
killing and shit. You know?
I remember I was talking to you one time about like um morality. Like, you're not truly moral until you're dangerous and choose to keep your sword sheathed.
Right.
I can't take credit for that quote, but I think Zach's like he's a man's man. Like he knows how to take care of people, but he's also like super nice,
Right.
and he knows. I don't know. He's a cool guy. I'm.
You probably told me that quote when you were trying to stop me from killing the 40 Club, huh?
Oh yeah, you might be right. Yeah, but like, quick on the 40 Club. I think the more we ignore them, the less power they have. And so
Right.
if we just kind of keep doing our thing, we call them out when they say dumb shit and then block them and move on. I think that's better for us.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I agree because like social media, you say shit to get likes or to get attention, to get views. But if you all ignore somebody, that completely makes their whole social media look irrelevant, you know?
yep,
So then
yep,
they're like, damn, I don't have strength on this platform anymore because everybody's ignoring me. I have 0 likes. I got fucking, you know what I mean? No bad comments. I think they even get fuel because you ever notice like just say somebody likes Trump or whatever, and they go out in the middle of social media that's mainly, Democrats or, progressives and whatever, and they're just keep pushing for Trump, through all the bullshit, through all the Democrats, whatever, whatever. I think some of the guys just want to do that. Like, they want to wake up just to talk shit, because like what we were saying with this 214 and 165 and 40 million and all this other bullshit, like these guys are still holding on to that shit for either they just want to fight or sometimes, like you said, you brought up this Jeff Johns pocket thing, and I remember I was saying that like 2 years ago, and everybody was like, nah, I don't know about if Jeff Johns do that, blah blah blah. But
yeah,
I think it's kind of like obvious. Like Zack Snyder has Vero, and he rallies the troops through Vero. Jeff Johns has Twitter, and he sends the snakes in through Twitter. I mean, it's like people, we looking at so many different executives in so many different ways, and there's probably a lot of them involved. But I think the proof is in the pudding. It's Jeff Johns that's fucking up everything, and the people that like the 40 Club, they're Jeff Johns' crew. So he has I think he still has some Hollywood jobs and blah blah blah. So they're happy to run with whatever he say because they want to be where he's at. But us, on the other hand, we're happy to defend Zach because his work touched us. These guys, they're not like us. They're like little nerds, little fucking. I mean, they're just like. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know, but I don't know if
yeah,
I'll hang out with Eric or any of those guys like that. I'll be like, not to say I'm the coolest dude and all, but nah, I just don't think these people are like us. So I think they're like the complete opposite of us, and that will point directly at Jeff Johns.
yeah. As if they support the Snyder Cut movement, then I don't mind it. But if they start talking shit and being negative, then yeah, just cast them out.
Yeah, we gotta
We're too
figure
big for
out
that now.
how to ignore them and make their fucking social media look extremely irrelevant.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think we need to focus on them anymore. Like, just call them out. But everybody's got a different strategy
Yeah.
about them. I appreciate everybody because they know what's going on and they see it. I can't do it all the time, but I like focusing on all the crazy theories about what Zach tells us.
Right.
And one thing, before I forget, this is kind of random, but it popped back into my head. I was listening to that Joseph Campbell video earlier today, like I was telling you,
Yeah.
and he was talking about the story of Prometheus,
Right.
and that kind of reminded me of, in BVS when Lex Luthor is giving his speech,
Yep.
and he mentions uh, Prometheus sided with the humans, and for that he was given a thunderbolt.
Yeah.
And then you look at Diana, and she's like, "That's not what happened."
Right.
But
Exactly.
that was kind of funny. But I was thinking about that, and I was kind of like, I think, and if you study the story of Prometheus, he steals fire from Mount Olympus, where the gods are,
Right.
and he takes it to humans, and that like sparks civilization. Basically, they're able to make uh, metal and weapons
Yep.
and shields and everything,
Yep.
and it really just starts a revolution for humans like crazy. But I think the more I think about it, Zach is like Prometheus to us, in my opinion. I think Zach has been tortured by Warner Brothers, like Prometheus was tortured by Zeus. Um, and I think, and actually, in the story of Prometheus, he finally gets freed by Hercules. So I think, in a weird way, we're going to end up being Hercules because we're going to fight off Zeus's minions, and then we're going to help free Zach and let people see his movie, and then people can stop talking shit. But he's just like, he's showing us the truth, and he's giving us fire in movies, and it's sparking a revolution in us. I think that's how I see it anyway. The more I think about it, that kind of makes sense, and that's like the mythology aspect of Zach's movies. I think
Man,
it's kind of funny how just letting archetypes come out tells you more truth about the reality you're in now. And he couldn't have even predicted all this, or maybe he could have, but like just letting the archetypes come out it tells you more truth about what world you're living in,
right.
who the people you're around are.
Right. Now that's a double-sided coin what you just dropped, because there's two sides to that. Because you can say Prometheus, the bringing the light, is kind of like Lucifer that sparks a revolution in heaven, or you could say that's kind of like Jesus that brought the knowledge, or like, could say a lot of people have been connecting the quantum computer, the D-Wave computer, with the next Promethean event, like, if that's even a fucking word, but it's supposed to bring us so much knowledge that the human race is going to change forever. And that's what I think the quantum computer is, what the mother box is kind of located. I mean, kind of like, because, there's a lot of movies that's been talking about this quantum computer, but in different ways. It's a big fucking D-Wave computer is like a big black square. And if there, or black, maybe a rectangle, but if this cult shit, the cult of Saturn, supposedly like a big black cube they worship, or some crazy shit like that, or the, it's a lot of shit. I put some shit in here, but that D-Wave computer looks so much similar to a mother box, and the mother box.
Oh, yeah.
That mother box is supposed to make a portal to like dark side, or get to see dark side, or whatever. And that D-Wave computer is what CERN is using to make a portal, or to attempt to, or some shit like that. But they're saying this D-Wave computer now has so much processing power, it can already process information from the other side, like the dark side. So now, somebody given the planet that D-Wave computer, or given the planet, let's say, the information to 40 years from now build this fucking quantum computer, right? But that guy could be looked at as Prometheus also, that spirit, or that, whatever triggered Tesla or Edison or any of those guys like that. But then you can say, on the same flip side, that fucking D-Wave might destroy humans, or something like a Matrix type of war against computers, or whatever the mother box was doing, or anything. Bring something in from the dark side, the other side, and destroy everybody. So Zach could either be that guy giving us the mother box, or at the same time that guy warning us about the mother box. So
yeah,
he
dude.
could.
You just blew my mind.
Yeah, no. It's deep as fuck.
interesting.
Bro. It's deep as fuck. And when you look at, like, his shirt, that shirt design. First
Oh
you
yeah, all the gods.
Right, all the gods. First, you kind of see like the Kabbalah tree of life in it, and then you
Yeah.
look a little deeper and you see that little black cube. And I instantly thought of D-Wave quantum computer, instantly,
Wow.
and because that cube is like shit, all the representation of the quantum computers. They always represent it like a cube because it's like I don't know how many points are in a cube. What is 16? Well, 4, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. That's some math shit. You probably know that. But supposedly, quantum computers compute all those different points at one time. You know, like a regular computer just computes ones and zeros or something like that. This quantum computer computes a qubit. So when you look at a black square, that's actually what they're telling. And on the side of his shirt, it had a broken chain, which is kind of like indicating blockchain, because blockchain is how quantum computers think. You know, that's like the DNA to a quantum computer is a blockchain. And on the other side of that
Yeah.
shirt was a DNA strand, you know? So we've been talking about all of this shirt, even when we were talking about DNA memory and the memory inside of the blood. That is that A wrapped around the globe in the middle of his shirt. It's called the Akashic record. It's like the record of the whole globe, you know? So
Huh.
forever. So that's kind of like what what's his name? Cyborg tapped into when he saw the Nazi shit and he saw the plans and all this other shit. But this is what quantum computing is tapping into. It's tapping into multiple different points at one time, like a multiple universe. Like if
Yeah.
you look at it, the nightmare scene and that scene where Batman was going to get the kryptonite out of the back of the truck. You might have heard me talk about this, but the nightmare sequence, and there's other sequences in BVS. He showed a multiverse in that because the nightmare sequence, if you look at it, Batman walks out with his binoculars and he has a gun. And when he's chasing the LexCorp semi truck, he's on top of a crane looking through his scope and he has a gun. And then he's in one scene he's chasing this truck, in the other scene he's chasing a school bus, and at the end of the scene Lex pulls out kryptonite out of a box. At the end of this scene, Batman has fake kryptonite in the box, but it's the exact same scene, just different players, different people, different characters at doing a little bit of different things. So that's what quantum computer is computing. It's computing Ben W on Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 4, and they're all computing at one time. So that's what the shirts was trying to say. Like, all of the gods are in you. Everything from the top of that tree of life, from Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, everybody was all in that little baby Bruce or whoever at the bottom. And it all computed at one time. It's weird. So, I mean, it's some deep shit. But what I'm trying to say is, Zach, what you were just saying about the Prometheus guy really is kind of true, because that guy who gave the spark, the light to Earth is supposed to be like Lucifer. And he's mirrored completely with Jesus, you know? It's weird, man. It's weird, but you hit it right on the head and you caused me to start talking some deep shit.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid interpretation of that shirt. That shirt has so much into it, and that I like where you're going with that. Like how Zach does his parallels between his scenes.
Right.
Um, like how there's just so many parallels, not just between scenarios with those characters, but like even between movies.
Right.
And you'll see like a scenario repeat. Like we were about to see Superman do his first flight for the second time.
Right.
But yeah, like that stuff's crazy. I remember whenever the VBS challenges was happening, one of them that caught my eye was whenever see in the nightmare scene, Superman flies down underground, and he walks down this hallway towards Batman.
Yep.
He takes out two of Batman's helpers on his left and his right.
Yep.
And then if you cut to whenever Superman is meeting Batman, not in the nightmare scene,
Yep.
but when he's hovering above him and then he lands,
Yep.
he takes out the guns, right, on his left and right.
Correct.
And then in both scenes, he puts his hand on his chest.
Right.
And he pushes Batman back. Exactly. But in the nightmare scene, he kills Batman. Exactly. And in the real world scene, he just shoves him back, or in Earth One, however you want to call it.
Exactly.
And so I think in Batman's like mind, he'd already seen that scenario play out, and that was like the last straw to convince him that Superman is who he saw in his vision.
Right.
I was kind of like, I remember seeing that, and I was kind of like, God damn! Every time I watch this fucking movie, I find something deeper, something more, and that's why I love this shit.
Yep. And
every single time.
You're right, and it's something deeper in that too. That there's a damn, he's a scientist. I can't remember his name, but I was studying him during the T-shirt little campaign, and he's a quantum physics scientist, and he said how they're starting to measure how, but this was like in the 50s or 60s. It was like way long ago. I looked at all his pictures and they were black and white. But he said the beginning of all creation is radiation, light, and sound. And together they make a wave form that combats each other. And that gets either tighter during time, or it flares out over, but it's always like in a waveform, rather a really, really tight frequency wave that we can create matter. Like they say we're all in a single waveform, but they say this scientist said it all started with sound and light, right? Now check this out. On those scene you were just saying when he first met Batman, you were just talking about it. What did he do? He shot laser eyes, right? Radiation. He shot light. But also, when Batman caught him, what did he do? He shot sound waves. That shit is so fucking deep, dog. That shit is so fucking deep. That's why I love Zack Snyder. He knows this shit. He knows, like I just caught on when he put the shirt out, and I had to go fucking do some research or whatever. I don't even know how I started researching that, but I was researching quantum physics, and it was all like this professor talking. So he was like, the beginning of creation is radiation and sound. And then you look at this Batman and Superman shit, you see a radiation light beam, and then you see a sound wave. I'm like, how the fuck how does he know this type of shit? You know what I mean? So this is the type of shit that touches me, and I just want to see more movies like that, because nobody's putting that type of shit in their movies, Like, you can't watch a Marvel movie and get some shit like that, You're just like, oh, there's Hulk who doesn't want to be Hulk anymore. Oh, that's great, But
they're too concerned with trying to push a narrative and make money. They're not letting the archetypes come through, so you get some real truth.
Exactly.
Yeah, but was Zach's dad like a CIA agent or operative or something?
He was something in there. Me and Brian talked about it a few times, but
I remember hearing you guys talk about it.
Yeah, Zach's dad was I can't remember exactly what agency, but it was something that has to do with, I don't know. I don't want to say it wrong, but I'm thinking it was something about space. Like propulsion.
I wonder if his dad was telling him this shit, and way back when, and it's kind of like blowing Zach's mind, and Zach's like, "Fuck, I gotta figure out how to tell this to people, but I gotta hide it that Hollywood's gonna let me mass produce
it." Right. No, there's probably some truth to that, because it's knowledge, like whether it's given to you by Prometheus, Thoth, fucking Mercury, Lucifer, or whatever. I don't know. It's knowledge. And I think that's a big thing how we lost, because we wasn't at the time in BVS, we wasn't smart enough to beat Rotten Tomatoes. You know what I mean? We wasn't smart enough to even catch that, damn, Zach is just giving out a masterpiece with BVS. We wasn't we wasn't smart enough to see that at the time. So when they were saying stuff about Martha, we were kind of like, oh shit, damn, Martha is great. You know, we didn't really know what to say. We didn't know, like, right now, we're so much smarter because this 2-year time period and all the shit we've been talking about, all the shit we kind of try to break down. And, you know, when Zach gave out his shirt, it was just like, yeah, see if you can figure this shit out. And everybody just tried to get smarter, you know? You know, we had to level the fuck up, you know? Or then when somebody puts out...
No, it's...
What were you going to say?
No, yeah, it's every time Zach drops something for us, he knows is gonna blow our mind.
Right.
We're not ready for it half the time. We're just
Right.
kind of like, oh shit, yeah, we think we get it. We think we get it. I remember walking to BBS and I had such high hopes for that movie. I've never had higher hopes for any movie before.
Right.
And then I sat through that movie and my jaw dropped to the fucking floor like 3 or 4 times. I was like, this movie is unbelievable. Like,
Right.
we don't even deserve this. Like, as human beings, I was just like, as comic book fans, this is crazy. This is beyond any of my wildest dreams. Like,
Right.
I was just blown away by that movie. But
Right.
yeah, dude, every time Zach gives us something more, he's like, all right, they're ready for more. Let's drop some more knowledge. It's
Right.
crazy.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And it's... So what we're talking about with, like, Zach's dad, right? He probably knows all this shit, but he knows... like humans also. Like, say for instance, right, you're Prometheus or somebody, and you got this gift of fire, and you see the people down on there just fucking caveman, you know, like they're scared of the dark, you know, they don't want to hunt at night, they don't want to go out at night because then the big creatures and wolves and, you know, shit comes out at night to hunt them, you know. So now they got to eat all their food raw. You know what I'm saying? They have no real heat or warmth in the winter. And this one guy, like, dog, you need this. This is going to change everything. You know, it lights the way in the dark. It cooks their food. It keeps them warm. It gives them protection against other shit. But the double-edged sword also, it changed now into bullets and guns and shit like that. Yeah. So it's like the caveman... It started out so very useful, that fire, but then, you know, it became so fucking dangerous after we really started honing what fire is. Now it's a nuclear weapon that could just destroy the whole country. But it started
I hear you saying that we got to be careful with what Zach's given us. We gotta make sure we don't use it.
No, we have to be careful, yes, but. No, we have to level up, you know, because Zach probably running out of time, so he has to give us this shit. Or we're probably running out of time. We're probably cavemen with, like, shit, dark side approaching our fucking galaxy or some shit, and we got to level up quick. And time is probably of the essence. So, you know, even on the shirt, there was the hourglasses, you know, the sand hourglasses, and our time is probably running out. So as human, we have to probably not say leave the planet for good, but we probably have to start exploring our solar system with better ways of propulsion that doesn't take us fucking 9 months to get to Mars. You know what I'm saying? So we have to figure some shit out. But at our current rate of being brainwashed and McDonald's lovers and fucking, you know what I mean? Like MTV fools, we never gonna get there, dog. You know, so every now and then, somebody gotta come and give you that shit, dog. Even if it's like, you know, a t-shirt or a movie and I think a lot of people be on some, like, these directors are like Illuminati and all this shit like that, but I don't think they even grasp what's going on right now. These people that's like, you might see a 9/11 reference in some movie that came out in 1992, you know, but they're not saying, oh, the Illuminati did this. They're saying, yo, we heard this shit might happen. You need to learn it. But they can't say that, you know, because then they get fucked up or they get murdered or something like that in Hollywood. So I think that's what Zach is doing. He knows something, but we just got to catch up. I think his parents knew something, his family knew something, and that's always like these mass huge artists, you know, they just feel life in a different way. So they're able to interpret, maybe his dad sat him down one day and told him about, you know, fucking space travel or some shit like that, and
Or
that
maybe his birds and the bees talk was a little more sci-fi.
yeah, right, exactly. See, now you're getting me. So now all the sci-fi kids, they go out in Hollywood and they're like, fuck, I'm gonna tell this story and I'm gonna put it in a like a non-fiction way. But for the guys who can see it, you're gonna get something out of this, and it's maybe gonna level you up. And like, fuck, that T-shirt, I know Zack Snyder had to level us up with that T-shirt, and just to read it is just like, you know, oh damn, I just got that much smarter just watching it. So then you interpret it in his movies, you get that much smarter. I think Zach is giving us information, but just like the caveman, we gotta be smart using this shit though, because everybody not equipped for knowledge, bro. You know?
Yeah.
Man.
I think. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. I can hear you.
I think I got brought into watching Zack's films mostly because I was really into superheroes, right? And I wasn't really into comic books until I watched Man of Steel, and that was actually what got me into reading comic books. I was just mostly into watching the movies and stuff. But I think Zack's got a lot more stuff hidden in all of his other movies. Like 300, it's a great adaptation.
Right.
But I think he's probably got a lot of stuff that we still haven't dug into.
Right.
And I love it. I love using it for like rallying cries, like the Spartans and stuff.
Right.
But like you were showing a video the other day about maybe Zack's showing us something about 9/11 in the Watchmen movie.
Oh, right.
Like I think if Zack's been giving us all this stuff, and maybe Terrio too, I don't know. But if Zack's been giving us all this stuff, he's definitely been giving it to us this whole time.
Correct.
And I think a lot of your stuff is valid, but I think also Zack's kind of wanting us to wake up to our spiritual and human side. Like I see his movies, and I think they're kind of a deep cut to who people have been and who people need to wake up to who they need to be.
Right.
Coming up. I don't know if that's making any sense,
right,
but
definitely.
I think there's a lot of movies these days that are just preaching at us, telling us to change who we are and change and like pervert ourselves almost. And I think Zack's movies are telling us to kind of wake up to who we are.
Correct.
If that makes sense.
No, definitely.
At least that's how I feel when I watch them.
Definitely correct. You are. I think so. I think you're right. And it's like you said, he's been telling us this whole time, and it's shit. It's like that's what resonates with me. With 300, I like 300 visually, and I think that's what stuck with me. But when I watch it more, it's like a New World Order story, kind of like the whole world ganging up on these free people, you know, like the whole planet, you know, and then these people defy it, and that's what I kind of resonate with America, you know. It's like that's how it feels in our country, you know.
You're digging deep right now, man. Like that's exactly what 300 is all about. It's about preserving freedom for the individual. It's about keeping our lands free and free from tyranny and free from having to be subservient to a foreign king or somebody who just doesn't have our interests at heart.
Right.
Like you hit the nail on the head, I think, man.
Oh man, I gotta get you on more shows, though.
I don't know.
You make me sound smart.
No, you are smart. I think you're hitting the ball out of the park all the time, man. And I love listening to your show. You have a lot of cool guests on.
I appreciate that, man. I hope you'll give me more than this one interview, you know?
All right, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how much more I have to say, you know?
So tell me this. Tell me some of your accomplishments in this movement because I've seen you just do some cool stuff. So, most people I think everybody knows you, but for somebody who don't know who's been W, tell us a little bit about your Snyder Cut resume.
Well, my first real interaction with anybody in the Snyder Company was Vinaldo, Dr. Chris.
Yeah, he's the
He,
man.
that was back when we were doing the phone call campaign, and I remember he was DMing me on Vero, and he told me what phone number to call, and he told me to like pretend I was part of the legal advice from some other studio or whatever, and so I called him, and I was having a hard time, and I told him this later. He thought it was kind of funny. I was having a hard time getting through past the operator. I was like, please transfer me to Toby Emmerich's assistant's office. And the lady was like, well, why do you want to talk to them? I was like, well, I'm from legal. And they did talk to them about a legal decision. She's like, well, I'm going to transfer you to legal. And I was like, no, don't. And then she transfers me. And then I get to legal and I'm like, hey, I think I got transferred to the wrong place. Would you guys mind transferring me to Toby Emmerich's assistant's office? And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I was just like, awesome. So then I left my message there, and he got a kick out of that. But Bernal was a great guy.
Hell yeah, Ronaldo's cool.
Yeah.
So that is a funny story, man. Like, you really thought about that phone call, and that shit it's dope as hell,
Yeah, it's just kind of funny. I didn't expect for them to transfer me to legal, actually, but they probably did what they were told. But yeah, it's been a long one, man. Like I had I hardly knew anybody when this all started. Um, and I was just tweeting underneath a bunch of Warner Brothers Twitter posts. I was just like, "Hey, can you guys release the Snyder Cut?" And I was just like, "Come on, guys, I'm gonna start boycotting your movies if you don't release the Snyder Cut." And that's not gonna make a difference if just I'm doing it. But um, I don't know. I didn't really meet a lot of people until I actually got to SnyderCon. I mean, I knew Fiona and I'd been listening to you and Chris Wong and a bunch of people. But until I got to SnyderCon, I got to meet like several members of TPZ. I met Darren, who I found out actually lives not too far away from me, like 30 minutes or so.
Oh wow.
And Darren Benson.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
TPZ.
he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I met him and I met some other guys. I met, oh shit, I forgot his name. Uh, he broke the story on Dark Side for Film Exiles. Oh, I forgot. Can't believe I forgot his name. Sorry. He keeps getting kicked off of Twitter, which is honestly it's happening with a lot of people for some reason. I think it just happened to Abdul, and I met Abdul
Yep.
too there.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, he was really cool. He just kind of came up to me. He's like, "Hey man, you look familiar." And I was like, "Cool. Yeah, you do too."
Abdul
But
is the man. Abdul, he's one of the guys who brought me in the game.
yeah, he's a cool guy.
Hell yeah.
I love all of his posts. They really get you pumped up.
Hell yeah. That's what his
Yeah.
job is, man. He's like a general of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Well, I
saw
remember,
you've
huh?
had pictures with like Jason Momoa and all that shit. Talk about that.
Oh, okay. Well, after we did our Comic-Con thing in San Diego, um, I I had a lot of fun holding a sign and meeting a bunch of people there. And I was kind of like, I want to do more of this on the ground stuff, but I don't want to just like stand in front of Walmart all day and be like that crazy preacher dude. But I realized that like social media has the biggest reach, and some of the some of the mainstays in the Snyder Cut movement are like Ray Fisher and Jason Momoa. And it just so happened that Jason was coming to my town or close enough to it that it was within driving distance. So like the day before I took off work and I made my sign, and it took longer than I expected it to because I'm not good at making signs, I guess. But the next day I went up there with a buddy and got my picture taken with him. I talked to him just briefly, and he was a cool dude. As I was walking in, there was like a couple of people that came up to me, and then one guy was like, "There will never be a Snyder cut," and this was after Jason Momoa had posted his Instagram photo of or his video of him and Zach, and he was like, "The Snyder cut's sick." Or I guess he
Right.
said "Cinder cut" on accident a couple times, but then I get up to talk to Jason, and he's like, he's like, "Oh boy," and I'm like, "Yeah, you know what that's about." Pointing to the sign, and he grabs the sign and he does his like yell, his like woohoo yell or whatever.
Yeah.
And he puts his arm around. We got the picture, and I turned to him and I was like, "Man, I gotta ask, like, what is everything done on it? Like, are all the visual effects and everything?" And he looked like super pumped. He was like, "Man, if I said these two words, you would just freak out." And then I didn't know how to react to that. And then he kind of looked at me for a minute. He was like, "Man, I hope they leak it." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like they're not even planning. Like, but he's a really cool guy.
Right, right. Yeah, dog. I
Yeah,
remember seeing those pictures and I was like, damn, dog, this Ben W dude is on point, you know. And then here, what's funny,
yeah.
my kids, my younger two boys, they say BMW like that, Ben W. So it's like,
Yeah, BMW.
right. Every time I think of your name or I say it in my head, I say it in my little baby boy's voice. It's like Ben W.
That's funny, man. Yeah, I guess I need to get a new car so I can be accurate to your kids.
Yeah, it'll happen one day, dog. Trust me. So
What?
I said it'll happen one day.
Oh, okay.
What about I remember. Was it you that made this sign that had a bunch of like 300 warriors with Zack Snyder and everybody's head was photoshopped? Was it you that made
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I did actually. That was a terrible Photoshop job, but it it blew me away. Jacob, Jacob.
Torres.
What's his last name? Torres.
Yeah, he's gonna be on the show tomorrow.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I remember interacting with him back in the day. He's been here since the beginning too. But yeah, he posted my picture, my shitty edited picture on Vero, and Zach liked it, and that blew my mind. I think that was before I even got to meet Zach, but that was like the first time I got some Zach crack. Yeah, hooked after that.
When I saw that picture, yeah, you get hooked after the first try of Zach Craig.
Uh-huh.
When I saw that picture and I saw my face on it, I was like, yo, what the fuck is this? But fucking, I'm gonna share it anyway. Zach liked it on my page also. And it
Oh,
was
nice.
because I saw myself like in the back and I saw my head and I was like, who the fuck did this?
Yeah, I was just trying to capture like all the people that like really inspire me every day. And at the time, I didn't really know a lot of people, so there's like you'll see John Garza on there, and you'll see Dave Film Junkie and all kinds of stuff. Like before we started picking up some stuff, I was listening to them for a lot of my news because I didn't know any better.
Right.
And some of their stuff, I still feel like it was a little bit helpful back in the day, like some of
Right.
the Justice League, the periodic table
Right.
of Justice League. That was kind of interesting that John put together,
Right.
but he started going way too negative for me recently.
Right. Why
But
why do
yeah,
you think he's been doing that? I'm a hold that question. What's going on with
I
that
don't know.
dude? That's the $1 million question because
Yeah,
sometimes
I don't
you've
know if we want to
always
jump down that rabbit hole again.
I'm not worried about that dude, but sometimes you kind of when we talk like offline or whatever, you'll tell me, damn, like Dave is pretty cool sometimes. He's not maybe as
Well,
bad as the rest of them, huh?
that's how I felt about Dave for a short while, and oh shit. So I met Comic Movie Marks and Dave at SnyderCon. I also met Chris Wong there. I didn't get to talk to him much. I got to talk to Comic Movie Marks there. I still think they're cool guys. I just think they're really into like the blogger, content creator kind of world.
Right.
And I think they make a lot of sense. I had fun talking to them a lot, but when Dave showed up, like I told a couple of people this, but like the last night, it was weird. Like a bunch of hooligans came out the last night, and I heard some of them shouting like, "Hey, where's Dave the film junkie? Like, where's Dave?" And Zack Snyder's on the fucking stage.
Wow.
I was just like, "What the hell is going on?"
Wow.
But you remember me sending you that tweet I had at Dave back in the day. He probably won't even remember it at this point, but I was mad at Dave for saying that WB doesn't owe us anything.
Right.
And that felt like a betrayal to me.
Right.
I don't know if he backtracked on his words later, but like, dude, I looked forward to this movie for a long time, and then I paid my ticket to see a Zack Snyder film, and they showed me Joss' shit.
Right.
And I was pissed, and I'm kind of like, where's the movie I paid to see, and where's the movie that I basically helped support and like
Right.
I promoted to all my friends. I was like, you don't understand. This is gonna be like the capstone to Superman's arc, and it's his rebirth. It's gonna be crazy.
Right.
And then it didn't happen. It was just garbage.
Right.
And so that yeah. So I haven't seen eye to eye with Dave for a while, but I don't hate the guy. It's just I think he's too much in the blogger sphere and everything like that.
Right.
He's trying to get content, and I mean if he can make money off of it, good on him, but I don't know. I don't feel like that's 100% like for Zach's movies. Like you see Fiona, she made a fucking website. Like nobody paid her to do that.
Right.
And Vinaldo's been busting his butt this whole time.
Right.
Like these people don't ask for credit.
Right.
And they deserve the most. Like they've been doing it the most, and they don't talk shit.
Right.
Like Vinaldo's King of the Toxic or whatever, but they don't talk shit about Zach is what I mean.
Right.
Like, and that's what's important.
Right.
It's like we're in this for Zach. So.
Right. Exactly.
Sorry, I don't remember what your question was.
No, I don't even
tangent.
remember either, but that was a perfect answer.
My bad, man.
So check this out. We're about an hour and 11 minutes into it, so I want you to give some shout outs and everybody who you got love for, or whoever you just want to say what's up to.
Oh man, start off with like a blanket, like everybody, like the Spartans, the Amazons, TPZs. But I remember I've interacted with the Nerd Queens a lot. They're busting their butt too. They're really organizing everything, and I know TPZ started this whole thing with their Ink to the People shirt, the I Heart ZS. I'm wearing one of those right now.
Oh, dope.
But there's so many people in this. I don't want to leave anybody out, but just maybe a couple of people who I don't think get enough. There's this guy Flavio. I see him. I've seen him on Twitter. He's been doing a lot of work. Leonidas been doing a lot of work. Jacob. Yeah. Dude, there's so many people. It's crazy. Like we broke mainstream, and it's fucking everybody.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Koj, of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
There's so many people, dude.
Well, that wraps. That's a good blanket shout out. If there was one thing you want to close remark and say to Zach, what would you say right now?
His movies mean everything to me at this point. He's given me a lot of purpose in life, and I really hope we get to see his artistic vision. Just a big thank you, I guess.
Dope. Dope.
Does that work?
Yeah, that was perfect. And I wanted to say before we close it out, the only reason that they sent you through the legal team because on the phone you sound white. If that was my ass, they would have hung up on me immediately.
You gotta put on your white voice.
They would have been like, nigga, please, click.
Oh man, yeah, I gotta make myself sound more professional and stuff too. I don't talk that professional all the time.
I would have been like,
That's funny, man.
yo, can y'all send me the Homeboys legal team? And they would be like, who is Homeboy, sir?
You know, homeboy, Emmerich.
You know, my homie Emmerich. All right, bro. Well, I appreciate the interview. Like I said, I hope it's not the last one, and I'm gonna go edit so we have something out tomorrow.
Awesome, thanks, man. I'm gonna send you that video. I think you really like it, the Joseph Campbell one.
Yeah, I was gonna make a Joseph Campbell intro, so send it to me, and I can
sweet.
probably do that. How many minutes is it?
It's kind of long, so you might want to. I don't know. I can try and find a shorter one, I guess, but I'll definitely send you the long one.
Yeah,
it's worth it, honestly. Like if you want to listen to it, if you got time.
Yeah, send it to me.
Sure.
All right, homie.
Cool, man. Thanks.
No problem.
Appreciate
Go
it.
Deep 134, my homie, super cool dude, aka BMW.
Perfect.
All right, man. Peace.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later.
All right, dog. Talk to you later.
You guys know Henry from Minute Physics, right? Well, he and I just made a video on a certain quantum mechanical topic, Bell's inequalities.
It's a really mind-warping topic that not enough people know about, and even though it's a quantum thing, it's based on some surprisingly simple math, and you should definitely check it out.
For this video, we have in mind those viewers who actually want to learn some quantum mechanics more deeply. And obviously, it's a huge topic, nowhere near the scope of a single video, but the question we asked was, what topic could we present that's not meant to be some eye-catching piece of quantum weirdness, but which actually lays down some useful foundations for anyone who, wants to learn this field? What topic would set the right intuitions for someone before they dove into, say, the Feynman lectures? Well, a natural place to start, where quantum mechanics itself started, is light. Specifically, if you want to learn quantum, you have to have an understanding of waves and how they're described mathematically. And what we'd like to build to here is the relationship between the energy in a purely classical wave and the probabilities that govern quantum behavior.
In fact, we'll actually spend most of the time talking through the pre-quantum understanding of light, since that sets up a lot of the relevant wave mechanics. The thing is, a lot of ideas from quantum mechanics, like describing states as superpositions with various amplitudes and phases, come up in the context of classical waves in a way that doesn't involve any of the quantum weirdness people might be familiar with. This also helps to appreciate what's actually different in quantum mechanics, namely certain restrictions on how much energy these waves can have, how they behave when measured, and quantum entanglement, though we won't cover entanglement in this video. So we'll start with the late 1800s understanding of light as waves in the electromagnetic field.
Here, let's break that down a bit. The electric field is a vector field, and that means every point in space has some arrow attached to it, indicating the direction and strength of the field. Now, the physical meaning of those arrows is that if you have some charged particle in space, there's going to be a force on that particle in the direction of the arrow, and it's proportional to the length of the arrow and the specific charge of the particle. Likewise, the magnetic field, it's another vector field, where now the physical meaning of each arrow is that when a charged particle is moving through that space, there's going to be a force perpendicular to both its direction of motion and to the direction of the magnetic field, and the strength of that force is proportional to the charge of the particle, its velocity, and the length of the magnetic field arrow.
For example, a wire with a current of moving charges next to a magnet is either pushed or pulled by that magnetic field. A kind of culmination of the 19th century physics understanding of how these two fields work are Maxwell's equations, which among other things describe how each of these fields can cause a change to the other.
Specifically, what Maxwell's equations tell us is that when the electric field arrows seem to be forming a loop around some region, the magnetic field will be increasing inside that region, perpendicular to the plane of the loop. And symmetrically, such a loop in the magnetic field corresponds to a change in the electric field within it, perpendicular to the plane of the loop. Now, the specifics for how exactly these equations work is really beautiful and worth a full video on its own, but all you need to know for now is that one natural consequence of this mutual interplay in how changes to one field cause changes to the other in its neighboring regions is that you get these propagating waves where the electric field and magnetic fields are oscillating perpendicular to each other and perpendicular to the direction of propagation. When you hear the term electromagnetic radiation, which refers to things like radio waves and visible light, this is what it's talking about, propagating waves in both the electric and magnetic fields.
Of course, it's now almost mainstream to know of light as electromagnetic radiation, but it's neat to think about just how surprising this was in Maxwell's time. That these fields that have to do with forces on charged particles and magnets not only have something to do with light, but that what light is a propagating wave as these two fields dance with each other, causing this mutual oscillation of increasing and decreasing field strength.
With this as a visual, let's take a moment to lay down the math used to describe waves. It'll still be purely classical, but ideas that are core to quantum mechanics, like superposition, amplitudes, phases, all of these come up in this context, and I would argue with a clearer motivation for what they actually mean. Take this wave and think of it as directed straight out of the screen, towards your face. And let's go ahead and ignore the magnetic field right now, just looking at how the electric field oscillates. And also, we're only going to focus on one of these vectors oscillating in the plane of the screen, which we'll think of as the XY plane. If it oscillates horizontally, like this, we say that the light is horizontally polarized. So the Y component of this electric field is 0 at all times, and we might write the X component as something like cosine of 2 pi times ft, where f represents some frequency and t is time. So if f was 1, for example, that means it takes exactly 1 second for this cosine function to go through a full cycle. For a lower frequency, that would mean it takes more time for the cosine to go through its full cycle. As the value t increases, the inside of this cosine function increases more slowly. Also, we're going to include another term in here, phi, called the phase shift, which tells us where this vector is in its cycle at time t equals 0. You'll see why that matters in just a moment. Now by default, cosine only oscillates between -1 and 1, so let's put another term in front, a, that gives us the amplitude of this wave. One more thing, just to make things look a little more like they often do in quantum mechanics, instead of writing it as a column vector like this, I'm going to separate it out into two different components using these symbols called kets. This ket here indicates a unit vector in the horizontal direction, and this ket over here represents a unit vector in the vertical direction. If the light is vertically polarized, meaning the electric field is wiggling purely in the up and down direction, its equation might look like this, where the horizontal component is now 0, and the vertical component is a cosine with some frequency, amplitude, and a phase shift. Now if you have two distinct waves, two ways of wiggling through space over time that solve Maxwell's equations, then adding both of these together gives another valid wave, at least in a vacuum. That is, at each point in time, add these two vectors tip to tail to get a new vector. Doing this at all points in space and all points in time gives a new, valid solution to Maxwell's equations. At least this is all true in a vacuum.
This is because Maxwell's equations in a vacuum are what's called linear equations. They're essentially a combination of derivatives acting on the electric and magnetic fields to give 0. So if one field F1 satisfies this equation, and another field F2 satisfies it, then their sum, F1 plus F2, also satisfies it, since derivatives are linear. So the sum of two or more solutions to Maxwell's equations is also a solution to Maxwell's equations.
This new wave is called a superposition of the first two. And here, superposition essentially just means sum, or in some contexts, weighted sum, since if you include some kind of amplitude and phase shift in each of these components, it can still be called a superposition of the two original vectors. Now right now, the resulting superposition is a wave wiggling in the diagonal direction. But if the horizontal and vertical components were out of phase with each other, which might happen if you increase the phase shift in one of them, their sum might instead trace out some sort of ellipse. And in the case where the phases are exactly 90 degrees out of sync with each other, and the amplitudes are both equal, this is what we call circularly polarized light. This, by the way, is why it's important to keep track not just of the amplitude in each direction, but also of the phase. It affects the way the two waves add together. That's also an important idea that carries over to quantum, and underlies some of the things that look confusing at first. And here's another important idea. We're describing waves by adding together the horizontal and vertical components, but we could also choose to describe everything with respect to different directions. I mean, you could describe waves as some superposition of the diagonal and the anti-diagonal directions. In that case, vertically polarized light would actually be a superposition of these two diagonal wiggling directions, at least when both are in phase with each other and they have the same magnitude. Now, the choice of which directions you write things in terms of is called a basis, and which basis is nicest to work with, well, that typically depends on what you're actually doing with the light. For example, if you have a polarizing filter, like that from a set of polarized sunglasses, the way these work is by absorbing the energy from electromagnetic oscillations in some particular direction. A vertically oriented polarizer, for example, would absorb all of the energy from these waves along the horizontal directions. At least classically, that's how you might think about it. So, if you're analyzing light and it's passing through a filter like this, it's nice to describe it with respect to the horizontal and vertical directions. That way, what you can say is that whatever light passes through the filter is just the vertical component of the original wave. But if you had a filter oriented, say, diagonally, well, then it would be convenient to describe things as a superposition of that diagonal direction and its perpendicular anti-diagonal direction.
These ideas will carry over almost word for word to the quantum case. Quantum states, much like this wiggling direction of our wave, are described as a superposition of multiple base states, where you have many choices for what base states to use. And just like with classical waves, the components of such a superposition will have both an amplitude and a phase of some kind. And by the way, for those of you who do read more into quantum mechanics, you'll find that these components are actually given using a single complex number rather than a cosine expression like this one. One way to think of this is that complex numbers are just a very convenient and natural mathematical way to encode an amplitude and a phase with a single value. That can make things a little confusing because it's hard to visualize a pair of complex numbers, which is what would describe a superposition of two base states. But you can think about the use of complex numbers throughout quantum mechanics as a result of its underlying wavy nature, and its need to encapsulate the amplitude and the phase for each direction.
Okay, just one quick point before getting into the quantum. Look at one of these waves and focus just on the electric field portion like we were before. Classically, we think about the energy of a wave like this as being proportional to the square of its amplitude. And I want you to notice how well this lines up with the Pythagorean theorem. If you were to describe this wave as a superposition of a horizontal component with amplitude AX and a vertical component with amplitude AY, then its energy density is proportional to AX squared plus AY squared. And you can think of this in two different ways. Either it's because you're adding up the energies of each component in the superposition, or it's just that you're figuring out the new amplitude using the Pythagorean theorem and taking the square. Isn't that nice?
In the classical understanding of light, you should be able to dial this energy up and down continuously however you want by changing the amplitude of the wave. But what physicists started to notice in the late 19th and early 20th centuries was that this energy actually seems to come in discrete amounts. Specifically, the energy of one of these electromagnetic waves always seems to come as an integer multiple of a specific constant times the frequency of that wave. We now call this constant Planck's constant, commonly denoting it with the letter h. Physically, what this means is that whenever this wave trades its energy with something else, like an electron, the amount of energy it trades off is always an integer multiple of h times its frequency. Importantly, this means there is some minimal non-zero energy level for waves of a given frequency, hf. If you have an electromagnetic wave with this frequency and energy, you cannot make it smaller without eliminating it entirely. That feels weird when the conception of a wave is a nice continuously oscillating vector field. But that's not how the universe works, as late 19th and early 20th century experiments started to expose. In fact, I've done a video about this called The Origin of Quantum Mechanics.
However, it's worth noting that this phenomenon is actually common in waves when they're constrained in certain ways, like in pipes or instrument strings, and it's called harmonics. What's weird is that electromagnetic waves do this in free space, even when they're not constrained.
And what do we call an electromagnetic wave with this minimal possible energy? A photon.
But like I said, the math used to describe classical electromagnetic waves carries over to describing a photon. It might have, say, a 45-degree diagonal polarization, which can be described as a superposition of a purely horizontal state and a purely vertical state, where each one of these components has some amplitude and phase. And with a different choice in basis, that same state might be described as a superposition of two other directions. All of this is stuff that you would see if you started reading more into quantum mechanics. But this superposition has a different interpretation than before, and it has to. Let's say you were thinking of this diagonally polarized photon kind of classically, and you said it has an amplitude of 1 unit for some appropriate unit system. Well, that would make the hypothetical amplitudes of its horizontal and vertical components each the square root of 1/2. And like Henry said, the energy of a photon is this special constant h times its frequency. And because in a classical setting, energy is proportional to the square of the amplitude of this wave, it's tempting to think of half of the energy as being in the horizontal component, and half of it as being in the vertical component. But waves of this frequency cannot have half the energy of a photon. I mean, the whole novelty of quantum here is that energy comes in these discrete, indivisible chunks. So these components, with an imagined amplitude of 1 over the square root of 2, could not exist in isolation. And you might wonder what exactly they mean. Well, let's get experimental about it. If you were to take a vertically oriented polarizing filter and shoot this diagonally polarized photon right at it, what do you think would happen? Classically, the way you'd interpret this superposition is that the half of its energy in the horizontal direction would be absorbed. But because energy comes in these discrete photon packets, it either has to pass through with all of its energy or get absorbed entirely. And if you actually did this experiment, about half the time the photon goes through entirely, and about half the time it gets absorbed entirely. And it appears to be random whether a given photon passes through or not. If it does pass through, forcing it to make a decision like this actually changes it so that its polarization is oriented along the filter's direction. This is analogous to the classic Schrodinger's cat setup. You have something that's in a superposition of two states, but once you make a measurement of that superposition, forcing it to interact with an observer in a way where each of those two states would behave differently, from the perspective of that observer, this superposition collapses to be entirely in one state or entirely in another, dead or alive, horizontal or vertical. One pretty neat way to see this in action, which Henry and I talk about in the other video, is to take several polarized sunglasses, or some other form of polarizing filters, and start by holding 2 of them between you and some light source. If you rotate them to be 90 degrees off from each other, the light source is blacked out completely, or at least with perfect filters it would be, because all of the photons passing through that first one are polarized vertically, so they actually have a 0% chance of passing a filter oriented horizontally. But if you insert a third filter oriented at a 45-degree angle between the two, it actually lets more light through. And what's going on here is that 50% of the photons passing that vertical filter will also pass through the diagonal filter. And once they do, they're going to be changed to have a purely diagonal polarization. And then once they're in that state, they have a 50-50 chance of passing through the filter oriented at 90 degrees. So even though 0% of the photons passing through the first would pass through that last if nothing was in between, by introducing another filter, 25% of them now pass through all 3. Now that's something that you could not explain unless that middle filter forces the photons to change their states. And that experiment, by the way, becomes all the weirder when you dig into the specific probabilities for angles between 0 and 45 degrees. And that's actually what we talk about in the other video. For example, one specific value we focus on there is the probability that a photon whose polarization is 22.5 degrees off the direction of a filter is going to end up passing through that filter. Again, it's helpful to think of this wave as having an amplitude of 1, and then you'd think of the horizontal component as having amplitude sine of 22.5 degrees, which is around 0.38, and the vertical component would have an amplitude cosine of 22.5 degrees, which is around 0.92. Classically, you might think of its horizontal component as having energy proportional to 0.38 squared, which is around 0.15. Likewise, you might think of the vertical component as having an energy proportional to 0.92 squared, which comes out to be around 0.85. And like we said before, classically, this would mean if you pass it through a vertical filter, 15% of its energy is absorbed in the horizontal direction. But because the energy of light comes in these discrete quanta that cannot be subdivided, Instead, what you observe is that 85% of the time, the photon passes through entirely, and 15% of the time, it gets completely blocked. Now I want to emphasize that the wave equations don't change. The photon is still described as a superposition of two oscillating components, each with some phase and amplitude, and these are often encoded using a single complex number. The difference is that classically, the squares of the amplitudes of each component tells you the amount of that wave's energy in each direction. But with quantized light, at this minimal non-zero energy level, the squares of those amplitudes tell you the probabilities that a given photon is going to be found to have all of its energy in one direction or not. Also, these components could still have some kind of phase difference. Just like with classical waves, photons can be circularly polarized, and there exist polarizing filters that only let through photons that are polarized circularly, say in the clockwise direction. Or rather, they let through all photons probabilistically, where the probabilities are determined by describing each one of those photons as a superposition of the clockwise and counterclockwise states, and then the square of the amplitude of the clockwise component gives you the desired probability.
Photons are, of course, just one quantum phenomenon, one where we initially understood it as a wave thanks to Maxwell's equations, and then as individual particles, or quanta, hence the name quantum mechanics. But as many of you well know, there's a flip side to this where many things that were understood to come in discrete little packets, like electrons, were discovered to be governed by similar wavy quantum mechanics. In cases way more general than this one photon polarization example, quantum mechanical states are described as some superposition of multiple base states, and the superposition depends on what basis you choose. Each component in this superposition is given with an amplitude and a phase, often encoded as a single complex number, and the need for this phase arises from the wave nature of these objects. As with the photon example, the choice of how to measure these objects can determine a set of base states, where the probability of measuring a particle to be in one of these base states is proportional to the squares of the amplitudes of these numbers. It's funny to think, though, that if the wavy nature of electrons and other particles was discovered first, we might instead refer to the whole subject as harmonic mechanics or something like that, since the weirdness there is not that waves come in discrete units, but that particles are governed by wave equations.
This video was supported in part by Brilliant, and as viewers of this channel know, what I like about Brilliant is that they're a great complement to passively watching educational videos. All of you here want to learn more math, or physics, or the math that prepares you for physics. And the only way to actually learn this stuff is to actively grapple with puzzles and problem solving. Brilliant offers many really well-curated sequences of problems that help you to master all sorts of technical subjects. You all like physics, clearly, so I think that you would enjoy their courses on classical mechanics and gravitational physics. And honestly, group theory would give you a really good foundation. But there are many other great courses too, especially in math. If you go to brilliant.org/3b1b, that one lets them know that you came from here, and also the first 200 people that go to that link are going to get 20% off the annual Brilliant Premium subscription. That's the subscription I've been using, and it's actually really fun to have a bank of these puzzles and problems. But of course, for those of you who want some more passive viewing, don't forget that Henry and I just put out a video on Bell's inequalities over on Minute Physics. If for some reason you haven't been following Minute Physics these days, and I don't know why you wouldn't have been, the videos there have been really top-notch, so definitely take a moment to poke around the rest of his channel.